Hello, welcome to the video. So I'm going to be showing you how I built this build right here, which was based off of a build by Super Sidecan, which I did for a building critique video, which I'll have linked in the description. Now, for this video right here, I would recommend watching it if you want to learn some building techniques and tricks and tips from myself about how I built it. So stay tuned for that and watch the entire video to get all of the information. So let's actually get right into this. Now, first off, when it goes into build critique, that's the reason why I wanted to do this build was for the build critique and for like a pimp my build style video. But I decided a better thing to explain would be the reason why I decided, well, whatever with pimping the build. I decided just build my own build that is sort of similar in a way, or sort of resembles his build. Sometimes it's not a good idea to necessarily pimp a build or critique it, extremely harsh in some situations, because especially even if they ask about it, because sometimes you don't understand why they built it. Here, let's look at an example. So let's think about a roleplay world. So if you're doing a roleplay world, you have to design the buildings to be fun and easy to roleplay in. So you're not going to really be doing very many small diagonal buildings. If it's going to be a diagonal building, it's going to be a little bit larger. Or if it is, if it's diagonal, you have to make sure it's more open, because it's hard to maneuver around in a diagonal building when you have many rooms in the building. Sometimes it can be really weird to actually build and move around in it. So you don't want to add too many diagonals in your build. And also, same way, you don't want to build it too small. You also don't want to build it too big. And there's a lot of things that you want to do for a roleplay world. Like making it easy to follow. You don't want to make the roads confusing unless you're doing it on purpose. A lot of things with the playability of it and how the player actually walks around the world is very important. And I like adding that in my aesthetic builds as well, but it's one of those things that if you don't really think about it, you might give someone a tip, oh, add in some diagonals to make the shape, better. They add in some diagonals, but then the interior is too small, and it doesn't really make any sense for a roleplay anymore, does it? Of course, that's, very, very specific, but still, you sort of get an idea. If you're just building something to look good, you can do anything you want. It doesn't matter what you do if you just want it to look good, because then you can do a lot of techniques that you wouldn't necessarily normally do, primarily because it generally, sort of breaks the build if you're doing a role play or a survival build. So, that kind of thing. Hopefully you get it. Let's just move on from there. So let's actually go into this video here. So we're going to be explaining, I hit my table. So let's actually get into me, explaining, why I did certain things in the build. So let's actually get started. Here we go. So first off, I am on a server called Builder's Refuge on the Java version of Minecraft, which lets me use World Edit, which that's what this is. World Edit is a very useful tool, primarily because it lets you block out shapes very quickly. Basically, for those of you who don't really understand what I mean by blocking out shapes, it's basically wireframing, but extremely quickly. Now, let's actually go on to the reason why I'm building it out of diamond blocks, which a lot of people get confused about, especially whenever I'm doing a looking for group post. Like, why are you building out of diamonds? That doesn't make any sense. Are you a bad builder or something? Main reason why I'm doing this is because it lets me see the shape better than if I did it any other way. Because if I added the colors in, and I'm going to have to pause it right here, because I'm going to accidentally go too far. I'm going to have to pause it once it gets to the colors at least. But whenever you're doing a build, and if you do it just out of diamond block or iron block or emerald, whatever it is, if you do it out of one color, and it's something that's an odd color especially, you primarily just look at the shape. Because, for example, there's a lot of builds that I see when people build it, they have the issue of when they build it, they put a lot of texture, they put a lot of color, they put a lot of details on top of the build, and they do it while they're building the shape. And what that means is that it's going to look good even if the shape doesn't look really good, because you can still make a build, you can still make some terrain look good just by adding in some really interesting colors and shapes, and smaller shapes at least, like details and stuff like that. You can still make a build look pretty decent by just doing that. But by building out of diamond first, it lets us get a general idea about what the build is supposed to look like without details, without anything else besides the shape. What this means is that if it looks good just made out of diamond blocks and that's it, it's definitely going to look good whenever you add details and color and textures and trees and a building on top, it's definitely going to look good at that point whenever it's only made out of diamond and it still looks good. So that's something that is more of an advanced sort of topic that I wanted to talk about. Now with this part right here, I decided to just paint it over just basic color, and you can sort of see I had added in lines of erosion with the dirt. That's one thing I did with the shaping process as well. Now I'm building this tower, and the tower I just wanted to build. I built it to the side to get an idea about what the entire structure was going to look like, because I didn't necessarily know. I knew I wanted it more fantasy, more like a schloss, which a schloss is a type of castle, which I've been learning quite a bit about castles, so I know some names of things like that are pretty interesting, which I'll have some links in the description. But I built it to the side to get an idea about what the style should look like, since I wasn't entirely sure. So it lets me design a little bit of it first, so that I can continue to the design of the castle after building it, which is, as you can imagine, pretty useful whenever you're building, so you can actually sort of get an idea about what you want it to look like before actually messing up the terrain, taking pieces of the terrain out. It just lets you double check that it looks good, just in case if you make a mistake. And also, another very good tip that I have is learning about real life castles. That's something I've been doing recently. I've been watching some videos, like I mentioned, by Shadiversity, and I'll have links in the description to that. And it's just really useful. Just right here, I'm just adding a couple extra textures to the terrain. Thought it was a little bit plain, but anyway, when I watching some historical videos about historical castles, giving me tips and tricks about, well, not really giving me tips and tricks, but telling me things that are about the castle that I wouldn't normally know. Like what battlements are, what crenellations are, what meticulations are, those kinds of things, and baileys, and all those kinds of things, and learning how castles were built back in the day. It's just very useful whenever you want to build a castle yourself. Unless you're doing something like completely fantasy, like a giant, Zeus castle or something. But anyway, this is the end of the video right here, the end of the time lapse at least. And here's the end result. Added in some trees, obviously, and I added in a mimosa tree, which is like a pink block, which I thought ended up pretty good in the end. This ended up being a pretty good build, and I hope you did enjoy it. And I'll have a link in the description to the second part of this. Oh, nah, I won't do that anymore since I didn't explain it at the beginning. I was going to post, actually here, in the comment section below, comment whether or not you want me to post a video of me building this without any audio, so that you can just see me build without me explaining things, so that you can sort of figure out your own tips and tricks from the video. If you want me to do it, I'll do it, but at the moment I don't really want to, because I didn't really explain it earlier. But anyway, hope you have a wonderful, great, sublime day, and God bless.